The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke.
Glory to you, O Lord.
Jesus said to his disciples, "A rich man had a steward who was reported to him for squandering his property. He summoned him and said, 'What is this I hear about you? Prepare a full account of your stewardship, because you can no longer be my steward.' The steward said to himself, 'What shall I do now that my master is taking the position of steward away from me? I am not strong enough to dig, and I am ashamed to beg. Oh, I know what I shall do, so that when I am removed from the stewardship, they may welcome me into their homes.' And so he called in his master's debtors one by one. So to the first he said, 'How much do you owe my master?' He replied, 100 measures of olive oil.' He said to him, 'Here is your promissory note. Sit down and quickly write 1 for 50. Then to another he said, 'And you, how much do you owe?' He replied, 100 measures of wheat.' And he said to him, 'Here is your promissory note. Write 1 for 80. And the master commended that dishonest steward for acting prudently. For the children of this world are more prudent in dealing with their own generation than the children of light." The Gospel of the Lord. Lahang adlaw kanatong tanan. Let me start our reflection for today's Mass, from the letter of St. Paul to the Romans in today's first reading, which is already the beginning of the conclusion of Paul's letter to the Romans. And in this conclusion, he mentioned a little something about him who is sometimes stern in reminding them, which actually is a constant reminder for us that whenever things concern, especially in terms of doctrine, teachings of the church, there are what we call non-negotiables, unchangeable truths. And this is the point where we always, if not really sometimes, we always hear the church authority to be very stern about things. We cannot just let things be so compromising in a way, because if these are really unchanging truths, then we cannot make modifications out of it. But the way we understand certain teachings is to also look at our own capacities to do it, but not to the point of compromising practically everything. Whatever is unchanging, whatever is non-negotiable remains as is. And this is sometimes what we hear in St. Paul's letters, when he really comes out very strong, stricto kaayo. And I think some people, when they hear about the church, when they hear church authorities talking about certain things, mangnuo dayon, kay stricto ra kaayo ang simbahan, mobalhin dayo laing relihiyon, mukuyog-kuyog daig mga fellowship, no? And then without practically understanding the main intention why we really have to keep that very sternly and very strongly, because that's what keeps us holding on to the will of God. There are things that can be modified, but there really are truths that are never or will never be modified. Now, whatever is interesting about this message finds an interesting expression in the gospel reading. Because the gospel reading, if you notice, this has already been read in one of the Sundays, previous Sundays. The gospel reading uses a negative example, the dishonest steward. But of course, dishonesty is never accepted. But the example there of the virtue of prudence, to judge ahead, to see ahead of time in order to balance things, to make an equilibrium. Unsay atong angay nga buhaton, unsa may buhaton kung dili mahitabo, no? That's the basic point of saying making a plan A and a plan B. But then the thing is, what we have to do, it always has to be according to the will of God, according to the God who loves us. And sometimes excuses may be allowed, but not all the time. Because there are really moments that excuses are not accepted. Sometimes we say, sorry na lang. But that is the truth. We can never practically make so much negotiations if the real truth and the unchanging truth is at stake. And so what shall we do? We really have to strive our best. And as we strive our best, we ask the help of others who have already gone through this, but then constantly remaining in the will of God, because that is what we have to follow in our lives of faith. Amen.